We are back on the Chosen Life podcast with Jonathan, the Chosen Lawyer, Wayne Frazer of Doug Laurie Sports. Wayne, growing up in sports, was your nickname on teams Wayner?
I had cousins who called me that. Oddly enough, I was a small kid. I played shortstop and center field and that sort of thing. And so my dad, who was 6'4", 3.5 or 4, was Big Wayne and I was Little Wayne. And which is annoying. I don't like the name Wayne anyway, because if you're at a mall, people are constantly yelling, "Hey," or "Wait" at their kids. And it sounds like Wayne. You spend your entire life going, "Me? Are you yelling at me?" No, you're yelling at your kid over there, right? I did have a couple of people who called me Wayner, which was annoying. My nickname, actually, even my mom calls me by my last name because I played so much and had Frazer yelled at me so many times from the sidelines that my mom even calls me Frazer. Um, but my other nickname was Gooch, which I don't know why. I honestly have no idea. Or Bluto, because I used to work out and lift weights in a Bluto t-shirt all the time, right? So I don't know. But yeah, it was really annoying when I got to be 6 foot and 190 pounds as a freshman, and I was still Little Wayne to all my cousins and everything. And I'm actually, I think I've told you this before, I'm the runt in my family. My dad was 6'3.5" or 6'4". My brother is 6'4" or 6'5". I have any number of cousins who are 6'5" to 6'7" or taller. And my dad had 5 sisters, and they were all 5'10" to 6'1". But I got from the upper body up, if you look at me, I'm 6'6", and from the waist down, I'm 5'6". No comments about that in the chat or anything. Yeah, little hands like Trump. Um, but yeah, I mean, I always tell people, if I had my growing up, I'm not a good athlete. I wasn't. I was a good player. But I was almost like having another coach around, right? I was a good lineman, but that was about it. Um, it was really aggravating to have coaches constantly ask me, "Hey, is your little brother going to play ball?" Because my brother was an incredible athlete, and he could dunk in eighth or ninth grade. He was 6'1", big hands, run like the wind, throw the ball hard. No interest whatsoever. If I'd had my brother's body, I think I probably would have played. I wouldn't have played like major college ball. I would have been a little too thin for that. But I would have played baseball somewhere or whatever. He just didn't interest him, and that's all well and good, right? But sometimes I think back about that and I think, man alive, had I had the legs that I was supposed to have and I was 6'5" instead of 6 foot, I definitely would have. I had opportunities to play college football just at D3 level and to play baseball at the D3 level. And instead I went somewhere and figured out that I could get pizza and beer delivered to my house. So it turned out okay. But sometimes I wish I'd have stuck around and played ball somewhere else, right? So
Wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. I've heard those words a couple
you
times.
know what? Just as an aside there, I don't know how many of your viewers know who Todd in the Shadows is. He's a YouTuber who does a lot of stuff on music and things like that. And he has a couple of different series. One of them is One Hit Wonders, which I just watched one on Skilo the other day, which is absolutely fascinating. The guy does a really good job. They're 15, 20 minutes. It's a very deep dive. He did one on Barbie Girl the other day, which was amazing. He has another great one called Train Records, where he does a whole deep dive on how an album just absolutely tanked and fell apart. I highly recommend that guy. He's a lot of fun.
Todd in the Shadows.
Yes.
Well, Little Wayne, we have quite a few topics to go through today. And, saying that, people think you're a rapper. I don't know if you've heard that or not, but there is a guy named Little Wayne out there.
I left my grills at home. Sorry.
It's okay. We'll have to survive on that one. In the Nylander family, starting off with topic number one, there's been a lot of debate right now with the Maple Leafs and how we're going to figure out this lovely NHL cap situation. And Maple Leaf fans are feeling somebody's going to have to go at this point in order to make the money happen. The predictions are saying the big contract is going to go to Austin Matthews. He is going to get that big money, maybe $15 million, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because An average reliever in MLB and a free agent contract is going to get 15 million bucks. But a top NHL player is going to get 15 million. The money's going to have to go somewhere. And apparently, Little Willie is going to have to bite the bullet on this one. I don't know his nickname in the Nylander family, but is William Nylander going to survive this year as a Maple Leaf? Yes or no?
I think yes. I think that one of two things will happen here. And the third thing, which is a trade, excuse me, right now, won't. As far as I can tell, it sounds like Nylander is in the 10.5 million range for 7 or 8 years, something like that. The Leafs are looking at maybe 8.5 or 9 for that same term. You know, when you're, $1 million here and $1 million there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. But $1 million to $1.5 million on a contract of that length is a pretty significant difference. I can't see them not playing with him here this year, and here's why. This team is set to sort of implode after this year. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Matthews? Everybody just seems to think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to sign. I don't think that. I don't think he won't sign, but unless they throw him $15 million a year, $14 million a year on a long-term deal, he can get that somewhere else, right? And he can go back closer to home if he wants to move closer to home. Tavares and Marner both come off after next season. You have basically the opportunity of, after this year, if you cannot make it work this year, you can blow the team up and basically start fresh. I know people are rolling their eyes, but what have you accomplished so far? Not much. And so now, are you going to lock yourself into Matthews and Nylander for a combined $26 million a year, $25 million a year for the next 6, 7, 8 years, right? Plus Morgan Riley at $7.5 million a year for the next however many years? Or are you going to keep Willie Nylander and just see what happens and roll the dice on this year? Because is Nylander worth $10 million? Probably. Somebody else would pay him $10 million. Somebody else might give him 10.5. I mean, he's not a bum or anything like that. And he was the most effective guy of the big four in the playoffs. But at some point, look, I'm sure we might talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets later on. Aaron Rodgers took a bit of a pay cut so that they could sign Dalvin Cook. Lots of players do that. The guys that they have on the team right now don't seem to be inclined to do that. And while I can't really blame them for that, I can also say, when the team blows up and you don't have enough money to go around, and all of a sudden now you have 2 or 3 guys making what the 4 guys were the year before or 2 years ago, that's an unsustainable model. And the model you have right now has not been very successful. So I almost feel like they're going to keep Nylander, and they're going to see what happens during the season. They can always, something could come up. They could sign him during the deal. They could trade him at the deadline if they wanted to. But I think they're going to roll with what they've got. This is a strong team. It's a very strong team that might blow up at the end of the year, next season, right? And then you have to decide what you're going to do. Do you basically just try to replace Nylander, and if Matthews doesn't sign, or do you give Matthews $15-14 million and now, Tavares comes off the books after next season and you can go out and get somebody else, but what do you do in the interim there? Is all that money now tied up in Matthews, Marner, and Nylander and Riley, and then you've got 15 David Comps to fill out and nothing against David Comp. I don't think he was worth $2.4 million a year for 4 years. That's a little extreme. But if you like David Comp, and it made me think of the Obama line. If you like your David Comp, you can keep your David Comp. And you will if you pay him that kind of money, right? But you're eventually going to get to a point where that's all you're going to have on your roster is those 3 guys and a bunch of other dudes that are 3rd or 4th liners from other teams, right? But I think I think Nylander will stick around. Do I think something's going to get done in the next week or two? No, I just think there's too big of a gap. Unless they just sit down and go, you know what? We're going to do a short-term deal, 1 or 2 years at some bigger number. But I don't think Nylander wants to do that. Why would he? Right? Unless he really wanted to stay here. And if he really wanted to stay here, he would have got the deal done already.
Now, if we roll with the team the way it is, Toronto Maple Leafs in this upcoming season, and they play like they did in last year's regular season, they're one of the top teams, and they keep the team intact. Let's assume that Matthews is going to sign, Nylander doesn't. You're probably not trading him at the deadline at that point, I'm going to guess, if you're rolling really, really well. So you're really risking here this season and walking away and getting nothing for him.
Right. The only way I would consider that I say the trade at the deadline thing because you can be as good as you want during the regular season, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. The Leafs have proved that over the last little while, right? But if it became obvious that there was no chance you were going to re-sign Nylander after the season was over with, and you could get 2 pieces for him that would help you as much as Nylander. And look, there's a lot of you could go get 2 $5 million guys that would be just as effective as William Nylander. I don't think so. I really don't believe that. And then my thinking has changed on that in the last little while. I think that if you're looking at trying to put together one season, the only way that trade works at the deadline is, say Riley gets hurt or something like that, and now you think we have maybe Nye steps up even further. You have somebody else who develops, or you are able to pick somebody up. Maybe Bertuzzi and Domi are even better than you think they're going to be. And now Nylander, while he's never going to be superfluous to your team, he's not really necessary. And now you can move him for a good defender and a pick or something like that, right? And you get something back and something that will help you in the short term also, right? Without having to have him walk away. But I really feel like this team is in a position where if you do deal Nylander now, people are going to be like, what the hell? Like, I mean, nobody's offering anything for him that's not futures, really. And futures are all well and good, especially considering how empty Dubas left the cupboard for the Leafs in terms of picks and things like that. But that first rounder and a third rounder or a first and a prospect don't mean a whole hell of a lot right now. And right now is what counts, especially, for an organization that has been really has not done what they should have done in the playoffs. And again, that's a bit of an overstatement too, because it's not like they lost to bums, right? I mean, these are good teams that they lost to, but they lost.
But they lost, and they ran into a hot goalie, and that's a story in the NHL. You run into a hot goalie, it's over. And I gotta ask you, Wayne, I always see the parallels between the NHL and the NBA. Both 3 letters, both start with an N. They run in the same time of the season, fairly close their schedules. Many times they're in the same arenas, same number of games approximately for the season. NHL players, they at some point sit down and say, what did we do to ourselves here? How did we allow such a hard cap situation? There's 5 of us on the ice at the time. In the NBA, there's a starting 5. Our top player on the NHL rink, in all the rinks, you take the top player, you take the McDavids of this world, take the Dreisaitl's, take the Crosbys. The top player in the NHL is making the same as the guy on the bench in the NBA. Something is very wrong here with the NHL. As far as strapping on skates, having to skate up and down, having to shoot the puck, having to stop pucks. What happened in the NHL that they allowed these salaries to happen? Numero uno. And number 2, if the NHL was the NBA and we had this type of situation with Nylander and Matthews, would we not be hearing all of a sudden, trade me, I'm going to sit out? NHL players are so nice comparatively to the NBA. How does the NHL avoid these type of situations? I know Nylander, had that before, but he did end up signing and, was a good soldier. But if that was the NBA, I don't think we'd be seeing Nylander that way. I think he'd be demanding a trade right now. What are your thoughts?
Well, I would say that the biggest difference between the NBA and the NHL are revenue streams, right? The NBA has a much deeper deeper well to dig out of or to go to dip from with their not only merchandising rights, but their TV contract is insane. And it's worldwide. You know, they get money from all over the place. So I think they just have, you know, so much more money they can pay out. But also, I think that it's a culture thing in hockey that, you know what, we're just kind of grateful to be here. You hear that all the time from athletes. Oh, it's just good to be here or whatever else. But with hockey, I think so many of the guys now, this is changing. But hockey, traditionally, there were an awful lot of guys who came from coal mining, you know, towns and far up north and things like that here, where, you know, a job in the NHL, if you were making, you know, in the 80s, you were making $100,000 a year or something. Well, that's a pretty good job, right? And that culture still has kind of stuck around. And now people are like, oh, well, you know, you're making $12 million a year. What are you complaining about? Hell, those guys 20, 30 years ago were making 500,000, right? It's a little tougher to shake that. And there's not as much of attachment. You don't hear people saying out loud, I want to be the highest paid guy on the team. I want to be the highest paid guy in the league. I want to be the highest paid defenseman.
Not in the NHL. Not in the NHL.
Yeah, in the NBA, you hear it constantly, right? It's extremely important. That's a cultural thing, right? It's not wrong. And from the NHL standpoint, yeah, I mean, comparatively speaking, is it weird that Connor McDavid makes $14 million a year and James Harden makes $35 million a year? Yeah, I mean, James Harden, I don't know if people are aware of this or not, sixth highest paid player in the history of the game.
You mean the guy who doesn't want to take that money and wants to sit out and demands to be traded because he was disrespected? 35 million US per season doesn't feel like disrespect to me.
Well, yeah, and that's the stupidity of that term. You disrespected me. No, if I disrespected you, I would have called you a piece of crap to your face and in the media, because you're the kind of jerk who demands a trade every 6 months and then gets pouty or rolls out the ding dongs and the honey buns, as I saw somebody say the other day. He suddenly gets fat real fast, right? That's disrespect, right? Disrespect is not, you know, and I think we'll get into the Harden thing later, so I don't want to jump ahead of that.
No, we're jumping in right now, buddy. We're jumping in right now.
look, again, it's not my place to tell people. We don't tell accountants or sanitation workers that you can't leave to go somewhere else to work where you want to work. We don't tell them you can't strike to try to get a better salary. So it's somewhat hypocritical to say James Harden should not be able to use all the leverage he has. It's hypocritical, but it also means that you're kind of a dink, right? Now, there's no kind of about it. You're just a jerk. And you don't have any real loyalty to the league or to anybody but yourself. Look, the whole thing with him standing on the half court in China and calling Daryl Morey a liar, maybe. If there's something that James wants to come out and tell us that's more of a truth than Daryl Morey signed you and said he would do this, this, and this. He would try to build this team here. And if not, he would try to deal you. But unfortunately, you're undealable because of your salary and because you keep making stupid demands. So if you're calling him a liar because he said he would trade you and now he can't because he's not willing to give you away for pennies on the dollar, although pretty soon I'm pretty sure they will be ready to give him away. That doesn't make Daryl Morey a liar. It makes him a victim of the position you put him in by being an obnoxious jerk. I'm not, again, James Harden can act however the hell James Harden wants to act. And it's turned out pretty well for him, even though he's a jerk because he's that good of a ball player, right? He was.
When you take all the shots, absolutely you're going to do well.
Yes, that's true too. Yeah, you know. But I mean, I look at it and I think I would be. It almost gets to the point where you are willing to give him away for nothing, and he doesn't want to go. Morey is a liar. I don't want to play for the 76ers anymore. Okay, well, we can trade you to Minnesota. I don't want to play for Minnesota. Oh, well, which one's more important to you? You don't want to play for a liar, or you don't want to play in Minnesota. Is everybody in Minnesota liars? Are they worse than Daryl Morey? Or is it just that you just want to pick and choose where you want to go? Again, there's a great story from a long time ago about when free agency really came into baseball in the early 70s, Andy Messerschmidt and those guys. And there was one guy in the MLB who recognized what was going on, and it was Charlie Finley, the owner of the Oakland A's. Marvin Miller said, we want free agency and everything else, and the owners were like, no, we can't do that. And Charlie Finley recommended there should be nothing but 1-year contracts. Everybody gets a 1-year contract, and everybody goes into free agency at the end of the year. And the Marvin Miller and the Players Association was terrified of that. Why? Because it means that nobody can build up this sort of, hold on the team over a long-term time. And after 1 year, you can go, this guy's a malcontent and a jerk. Nobody wants him. Go sit over there for a while and straighten your butt out, right? I almost kind of wish that's the way things work. It's hard. You couldn't do that because then you have no continuity for the fans and that sort of thing too. But it's almost like you kind of want collusion in this case and say, you know what, just here's $35 million. Go somewhere else. We don't care. You know what? We traded you to China. Go play in China. You want to be over there pushing your stuff.
At the end of this, though, if I have to blame one person in that saga, it's not James Harden, because James Harden has shown who he is consistently. We had a previous episode where we talked about, think back now to the archives, okay? We had an episode where we talked about that the Brooklyn Nets had KD, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden on the same team. What did you expect was going to happen? The fireworks show, like nothing but bad was going to come of that. We knew that. We said that. And it happened. And it blows my mind that Kyrie still found a home, got a 3-year deal, and still was a malcontent. Daryl Morey never learned his lesson as a kid. When mommy sat down with him at night, little Daryl went to bed and said, Daryl, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. He's been through this before with James. Yep. Did he, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Did he really expect that James Harden changed when he got him? Remember how he wanted to get out of Houston? You were in charge. But the allure of picking him up and thinking, you know what? I can fix this. This will be different, It's no different than going on a date and somebody telling you about how badly things went with their ex, and they're like, that's okay because I'm different. I'll be able to change you. You're going to be different with me. No, it's not. No, it's not. You break up with your ex that you dated 2 years ago, and you're like, you know what? Let's get back together because I've changed, you've changed. It's going to be different this time. It's never different. So I think Daryl Morey is to look in the mirror on this one and say, what the heck did I do? But then the rest of the league, I got to ask them, because somebody inevitably, because of the allure of the name recognition, they think that it's going to make other players happy. They're going to get all these points scored for them. Someone is going to pick them up inevitably for pennies on the dollar, like you said. But in my reasoning, I think they're going to think, you know what, he's going to be happy with us. It's going to be different. If you're the Toronto Raptors, for example, do you try to acquire James Harden?
Absolutely not. Now, do you mean if I was in charge of the Toronto Raptors? No, absolutely not. I don't think Masai Ujiri would be somebody who would be in that conversation at all either. I don't think so. I think there's an excellent chance, though, that some bottom-feeding team that doesn't have a big star right now but wants to sell tickets and can pick him up for next to nothing, maybe it makes sense for them. Except that if you're trying to develop some sort of culture in your team, James Harden is not the guy to bring in. I'm not saying that Harden doesn't work hard. I'm not saying he's not a good ball player. But is this the guy you want talking to your young players? Oh, yeah, all the executives are liars and they're going to stab you in the back and blah, 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 blah. Probably not the guy I'm going to bring in, right? So
you remember when the Raptors with Kawhi Leonard broke the hearts of 76ers fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
The big star that they had there at the time to build around with the younger guys and bring them up was Jimmy Butler, right? Jimmy Butler is on the Heat, and for intense as he is and outspoken, he also is the hardest worker. He's
Mm-hmm.
also encouraging everybody around him to be the best that they can be. 76ers somehow had kept Butler. It's a different scenario. Now you all of a sudden have this situation and Joel Embiid going on social media and taking off his picture, taking off references from the 76ers. This is your MVP. This is your big guy, literally. Um, Harden is gone. You know who's out the door. It's going to be Embiid more than likely. And how does the management sit with him and make him happy when they brought back no other star? They're capped out. It's a big effing problem, Wayne.
I hope Nick Nurse is having fun. I
He
mean,
wanted he wanted that Bucs job and he didn't get it, but he thought he did well with the 76ers.
Yeah, and now he may end up with, Embiid, and the question becomes, just like we were talking about with the Leafs here, if you're really not having any success with the way things were going, and you're willing to take a year or two, what can you get for Joel Embiid? The answer is a pile of stuff, right? I saw a possible trade to the Knicks with a couple of firsts and quickly and a couple of other things. Joel Embiid, 33 points a year last year, I think, right? But
he did, but also rebounding everything. Like he's an all-around player.
Yeah, he's an all-around player. But if he's unhappy and he's eating up a huge amount of contract space and stuff like that, at what point do you just go, fine? The problem is that these guys fail to understand that when they open their mouths about this, it makes it that much harder to move them. They just don't get it, right? Oh, I don't want to be here anymore, and blah 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 blah. And every time that guy opens his mouth, the other GMs go, well, there's another pick I can pull out of there, or there's a prospect I can take out. If you would, just go to the front office and say, look, I'm not happy and I want out of here, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. Maybe that happens, right? Maybe they do make a deal. The guy calls around a little bit and says, hey, I got a possibility here that maybe Joel Embiid is available and I'm calling you first. What do you think? And maybe that guy goes, oh my God, Joel Embiid, here's the farm, right? And you make that deal. But every time a player talks about it, it just makes it that much more difficult for the GM to make the deal in the long run, right?
Well, NBA, they handed out the harsh punishment. James Harden got fined $100,000 on a $35 million deal, Wayne. That's not a lot of money.
I have to say,
a third of 1%. Yeah.
I was watching a little bit of a video about that, and I am not a Stephen A. Smith fan. I don't dislike the guy himself, actually. I just can't watch him. The speech pattern is it's really annoying to me. But he said, I'll give him credit for this one. He said, do you think he called the league up and said, do you want that in pennies? Just $100,000 in pennies, because what the hell does he care, right? $100,000 is nothing. I'm not really a proponent of fining guys for things like this. You perfectly welcome to call your GM a liar and say publicly, I will never play for him again. Because really, the only person you've got the right to say whatever you want, and all of us can judge what a jerk you are for it. But if you're going to fine somebody like $100,000, I mean, again, you're right. That's just a pittance for him. And hell, I don't know, he'll probably write it into whoever he signs a deal with, is that they have to pay the fine.
Wayne, at some point, the NBA has to wake up. They had remember that one point where they're like, on the road, you have to wear suits no matter what. We have to show a certain image. At some point, guys, you got to wake up and you got to sit down with your players and your player union and say, this is not a good look for anybody. These players have managers, they have agents. Let's have a better look for all of us, because when you got the Kyrie Irvings of this world and the James Hardens of this world, this is the attention it's bringing to the NBA. This is not good attention. This
Right.
doesn't reflect well. And if I was the other players, I'd be PO'd. I'm like, I bust my butt. I say the right things. I went to, public speaking classes. There's no I in team. I give 110% every game, and God willing, it'll work out. All those generic lines that the NBA, MLB players say and the NHL players say. We got to get this thing under control, because I'm telling you, Wayne, this is going to become an epidemic, if not a pandemic, where you're going to be having other leagues and other players taking notice. You're going to have the Nylanders of this world, the Matthews of this world, and this continues on the NBA, and they get away with it. You're going to see more and more MLB players. You're going to see more NHL players holding out, criticizing their teams, forcing their teams to trade them, telling them to where they want to go with their contracts. Like, that's what blows my mind. You sign a long-term deal. Nobody put a gun to your head to do that. And you're allowed to sit it out, get paid, force a trade to somewhere else. You screw up the salary cap of your team, and your team gets nothing back for you. Like, what world is this?
Mm-hmm.
It's wrong. It's just wrong. And I think that teams have to stand up for it. Like, we're playing this kind of money. We should get back to respect. And if you don't want to sign those contracts, don't sign them. But you do honor the contracts. Be gentlemen about this. And this is not a good look for anybody in the league. So stop it.
Yeah. Well, I think the way that happens is, like I said, it's going to be tough to be that team that swallows the pill. But you say to James Harden, well, we're not trading you, and you're not playing for us this year either.
Like, if James Harden's
just go away, right?
If James Harden's, if he stays home, if James Harden stays home, says, I refuse. As far as I know, he shouldn't get paid. I don't think he's getting paid at that point. It's not the same thing as the Trevor Bauer situation, where Bauer, was suspended, but until everything got figured out, he was getting paid at the same time. If you have a contract, you're saying, I refuse to show up, I don't think you're getting paid at that point. And if that's the case, if I'm the 76ers, I would rather him sit at home, not pay him, and screw up that year. That's fine for him.
Well, I think it comes down to whether Harden is the one who says, I'm not going to honor the contract, or whether the 76ers say, you know what? You've said all this stuff about our GM and other people in the organization and everything. It's a sunk cost for us. Here's your $35 million. Go to hell. Go sit on your butt. And you can sit out. And you think you're going to make the Hall of Fame? Well, here's the years where the stats you're not going to get. And when they have the discussion, the first thing they're going to say is, you wanted to sit out. It was worth it to you to sit out for a whole year rather than come fulfill your contract. The first time that happens, then maybe somebody will go, oh, well, if you put it that way, I guess I'll show up, right? But the issue becomes whether you're paying the guy or not. And again, it's not my $35 million to be thrown around, but you have to send the message that, no, it's not about the $35 million anymore. It's about, we don't want you on this team, right? And you don't get to determine where we trade you. You don't get to determine how we use you in the games. None of that. Because we're paying you $35 million to be an employee and a player, not the coach, not the GM, not anything else. And the first team that takes that step and says, yep, you know what? That's enough. Just go sit down.
Little Wayne, I think that James Harden cares about a lot of things in life. Hall of Fame ain't one of them. And if I'll say one thing about the NBA Hall of Fame, it ain't Cooperstown.
No, that's true.
Everyone gets in at some point. So that's how it feels. And all the other Hall of Fames, whether it's the NHL or it's the NFL, and you can write in the comments, viewers, and you can criticize me for this one, but they're the halls of very good. The only real Hall of Fame is the Cooperstown one, period. And even they are starting to open doors more than they used to. So now, switching to the world of the NFL from the NBA, the Tampa Bay Bucs have decided to take a move from one Hall of Famer to another. So we've been waiting for Tom Brady to finish his dating life and enjoy his time off in the offseason, get ready for his big broadcasting debut, I think with Fox, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe come back. And Tom ain't coming back, even though he throws great spirals on the water, as we've seen him from his yacht. So the Tampa Bay Bucs have decided, you know what? We're not going to get one Hall of Famer. We'll go with a future other Hall of Famer, and that is Baker Mayfield. Tongue in cheek, of course. But Wayne, Baker. Let's see now. 2021 second round pick Kyle Trask. So people were thinking that Trask was going to be the future. They said, no, let that Trask as the backup. Mayfield's our guy. Browns, Rams, Panthers. This guy in his career has been inconsistent at best. I think he's been showing better of late in his career. Watching one of his last games out there with the Rams and actually looked pretty decent, I think. Are the Bucs under the illusion that this guy is now the real deal and figured it out later in his life? Or is this simply let's tank and let's get some high picks? What's your take on Baker Mayfield?
I don't understand the decision because the rest of this team isn't good enough for you to say, well, if we get a game manager like Baker Mayfield and we just say, hey, we want you to, don't throw picks and whatever else because we've got this amazing running game. We've got this great defense. Just, we think we can make the playoffs with you. That's Tampa Bay. That's not Tampa Bay. They have a great receiving core and Godwin and Mike Evans and all that. But I mean, Rashad White, a bunch of these guys like that. I just don't see their defense is not in the top half of the league. Are they going to, what are they going to go? 8-9, 7-10? Why would you not play Kyle Trask and see what you have? I mean, you took a second round or a flyer on him with the second round. I'm going to say a flyer, but you took him in the second round. It's pretty high draft capital. The guy has talent, but I don't know if they've just gotten to the point where they think he's a career backup. He just is not going to be the guy. And if that's the case, okay, then I understand signing Mayfield and playing this year. But if you're going to be bad, we have this discussion all the time. If you're going to be bad, be bad. Being mediocre does you no good. You need to be terrible so you can get a pick in the top 5 and maybe get that next quarterback or whatever it is that you think you really need, right? I don't have any great hatred for Baker Mayfield. I just don't think he's anything that's going to lead you to the promised land. And even if he was, I don't know that this team is good enough around him that even if I thought Baker Mayfield was a top 10 quarterback all of a sudden, that he would make Tampa Bay a playoff team. I'm kind of perplexed. They must just think that they've made a decision that Trask is not going to ever be the starter. And here you're the backup and you can play out your rookie campaign because it doesn't mean, or your rookie contract because it doesn't mean a whole lot to us right now. We got Mayfield here for the year, and then we'll go after a quarterback next year. That's the only thing I can think.
Wayne, I mean, watching the NFL as it did last year and the last couple of years, you take a Mayfield, you put him, let's say, on the 49ers. I think he's going to do pretty well. I mean, he looked like a smart guy, and you surround him with talent. I think he can do well. He can hold down the ship. That's his job. He's not going to be your be-all, end-all. That Bucs team with Brady looked scary out there. Like, Brady looked like he was slogging it. Like, he was unhappy. He had very little protection. He had very little to work with. If Brady's struggling with it, with Brady's talent, I'm not hopeful for Mayfield on this one. I think it's not going to be pretty. I don't think he's going to finish out the season as the starter. I think this team is 5 wins, 6 wins at best. And like you said, like Mayfield is basically like a Band-Aid almost on a leaky ship kind of thing. There's no point in being like that. You're going to do it. Just go the whole way, get those picks and develop younger players. But I think they have a hard time doing that. It's for the same reason almost like the White Sox, okay, in baseball. They just fired Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn, the GM and president of the team, right? They win the World Series, and then they're under the lure for the next 20 years. Well, I know things are rough, but these guys won the World Series for us, I think this team has that Super Bowl hangover, and they're like, we got to keep it together because we won a Super Bowl. Well, that team that won a Super Bowl ain't the same team now, and I think they need to get over that and find an identity, like you said. And I like Baker Mayfield, don't get me wrong. I like him as a backup. I like him on a stronger team. On this team, I think he'd be a great mentor for Trask and throw him in there. But listen, they may also be doing this not to put pressure on the rookie. Let Mayfield have a game or two. If Mayfield ain't rolling so well early on, they'll have no choice but to go to Trask. So I think it'll be interesting how it develops.
And as you said, I think that that's a distinct possibility. But if you think you're going to be bad, what does Baker Mayfield do to change that? The only way I think this makes sense is if they somehow can pull Jonathan Taylor out of their back pocket and make a deal for him from Indianapolis. Then if you say, okay, now we have Jonathan Taylor as our lead back, right? And now you've got Mayfield and a good receiving core, and you've got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Okay, now I understand why you would play Mayfield, because now you have a chance to maybe win 9 or 10 games. Maybe you make the playoffs because you hand the ball to Taylor 25 or 30 times a game. And Rachaad White, I like Rachaad White, okay, but, unproven at best. I think he could be, he's that third down back, and then you put Taylor in there, and Taylor makes any bad team 3 wins better, maybe mediocre team 3 wins, 2-3 wins better. But aside from them doing that, I just are making a deal that makes them a running team. I don't understand it, right? So
imagine Russell Wilson on this Bucs team. I think he would implode even worse than Mayfield. If I was the Broncos and I could get under that contract and get Mayfield as my starter and not Russell Wilson to take my chances with Mayfield, I would do it in a heartbeat.
I don't know. The subscription service for fantasy football that I subscribe to, one of the guys is in Denver, right? And there have been there's a lot of positive buzz about Wilson this year, right, under Peyton, and how his mobility looks better and everything else. I think Wilson will be better this year. Do I ever think he's going to be a top tier quarterback again? Probably not. And is Denver in a position where, they're going to be good? Probably not. But I think Wilson will be serviceable, right? He's going to, but that's not what you bring Russell Wilson in to be. You don't bring Russell Wilson in to be serviceable. You bring him in to be the guy, right? And I don't think he's the guy anymore, and I don't think they have the team around him to be the guy anymore. I don't know. I just, it's a little bit of a mystery. Nothing against Mayfield. I really thought this would be Trask, and no. So
I gotta say, talking to football talk, for those of you that are sports fans but are casual football fans or not really football fans, go to any stadium on any given Sunday and go watch an NFL game live. Nothing beats the experience. I would tell you, from the 4 major sports: baseball, hockey, basketball, football. Football is a whole different level. It is so fun to be out there live and get out there if you can. And it's the shortest season. It's amazing. This league built on essentially 8 home games, during regular season, plus preseason, plus postseason if you get it. But man, they're that big for a reason. And really excited about the upcoming season. And a lot of storylines will come in, and we will be talking about those as the year comes along.
I would say that one of the things that makes the NFL so huge too is that having that only the 8 home games, there's a scarcity. With all the other sports, there are so many opportunities to go to games, where if you want to go to an NFL game, you got 8 chances to go to your home field, right? It makes it and you have a whole week to build up thinking about going to that game. So I think it just makes it that much why college football is as huge as it is too, right? It's such an event.
MLB 81 home games. Wayne, it's too much. It's way too much. They got to shorten the season, man. It's way too much. 162 regular season games. Yeah. Plus spring training takes on forever. Plus the playoffs drag on forever. Like, come on. Wow.
Yeah, I could see. I think that if MLB cut it back to say 144 games, so basically you take almost a month out of the regular season, is anybody really going to notice?
Nope.
Nobody's going to care. If you cut the NHL season from 82 to 72, would anybody really notice? Probably not. you know?
Money,
Yeah, yeah, I know. Well,
money,
that's
money.
exactly it, right?
Money. It's because you're gonna pay these guys 15, 20, 35 million a year. We need every single home gate that we can. We need that revenue stream from watching the games on cable, on the internet. It's not they're only going to increase the amount of teams, the amount of games, because money, money, money as the salaries are going.
Right.
So let's
No,
switch
I don't
gears.
disagree.
Let's switch gears now to the world of MLB, because we are in the thick of pennant races right now. And Wayne, it's been very interesting to see in the American League this year. Yankees, as of the date of taping right now, 9-game losing streak, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Double digit behind to get into the wild card even. Wow, like we would never have seen this coming. The Mariners go and trade their closer. Then they have a meeting with the team to explain why they did this. And lo and behold, right now the season ends. They're going to the playoffs, and the Blue Jays ain't. Everybody thought this was going to be the best offensive team, the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays. Pitching, maybe question marks. Turns out the pitching was solid, except for Manoah. They acquire a second closer, although he's been kind of inconsistent. It's been this offense that's been really racking everyone's brains. And if this season finished as of right now, the Blue Jays are not in the playoffs, even with 3 wildcard teams in the AL. Wayne, what do you make of this 2023 Blue Jays team? Are they going to make the playoffs? What the heck happened here?
Well, I think what it boils down to is that you're looking at a situation where, are you going to be better down the stretch than either of Tampa Bay, Houston, and Seattle? Are you going to be better than those teams? If you were going to say one of those teams 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, you'd probably say the Mariners. But now the Mariners are firing on all cylinders. You know, now I would think if you're going to catch somebody, it might be Tampa Bay with what they're going through with having lost McClanahan and the Wander Franco deal and all that sort of thing. There's all kinds of issues, and yet they're 7-3 in their last 10 games. They're not giving up any.
The Rays' whole rotation is pretty much on the DL at this point, having Tommy John. Like they've lost 3-4 starters already this year.
Yeah.
And their best player is on leave because he's having legal issues. How are they pulling this off and the Jays are healthy except for Manoah? What's the secret sauce in Tampa and Toronto doesn't have it?
Well, Tampa has depth. They always have depth, right? Because when they trade, people think, you know, it's a meme or a trope that, oh, you know, Chris Archer gets traded away and blah 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 blah. But what did Branch Rickey, you know, the guy who built farm systems 100 years ago, 80 years ago, what did Branch Rickey say? You're always better to trade a player a year early rather than a year late. So the Rays are almost never wrong when they move a guy. I mean, maybe that guy goes and succeeds somewhere else, but generally they're not the player they were when they were in Tampa Bay. But by trading him that year early or moving out of him, they get a boatload back, and they're extremely good at identifying talent. You know, look at all the guys that the Rays have picked up off other people's waiver wires and fixed that have become really good, cheap options. It happens 2 or 3 times a year for the Rays. When's the last time that happened for the Jays? I'll give the Jays credit for this year, you know, sticking with Kikuchi. All right. Brandon Belt was a great signing for this team, right? I mean, you look at, and the crazy thing is
He's their best hitter.
He's a 250 hitter or whatever else. He's 375 OBP. 375, right? He's 35 years old. He can't play every day or whatever else. But, hey, what does he do, Pete? He gets on base. Do I care if it's a walk or a hit? I do not, right? The guy has good power when he's around, right? Look, I'm not unhappy with what the Jays did this year. I was a big proponent of getting Dalton Varsho. I like Varsho. Does it suck that Gurriel and we knew Moreno was going to be good, right? Does it suck that Gurriel went out there and played really well? No, you should be happy for Lourdes Gurriel. Varsho is looking finally like he's starting to come around a little more at the plate, but we always knew he was going to be a 240 hitter, and what you're hoping for is 25 or 30 home runs and some stolen bases and the best defense in the outfield possible. He's going to end up giving you that. He's going to end up hitting about 230 or 240. He's going to have 25 home runs. and he's signed long-term at a not a really expensive deal. Whit Merrifield has been really good. Kevin Kiermaier, really good. Their problems are Guerrero is not playing at the level that Guerrero was before, but he's not terrible. He's not a world beater like he was 2 years ago. Alejandro Kirk, not a world beater. The wrong guy to keep. We talked about this last year when they made the deal and Moreno, or earlier this year when Moreno left. And I got nothing against Alejandro Kirk. I love watching him play, but he's a really good pure hitter that his knees are going to go on him, and he's not going to be able to catch for very long. And he's not a DH. He's just not. He's got that kind of power, right? So I think they're doing the right thing in that they're playing Jansen more and more. And again, Jansen is very good defensively too. If he hits 20 home runs and hits 220, that wasn't good enough when JP Arencibia was here, but that's because he was terrible behind the plate. Jansen is very good, and he gives you. I want that up the middle stuff. There's nothing wrong with the team. There's nothing wrong overall. They just are running up against a hell of a lot. There are teams that are just built better. And like you said, how Tampa Bay does it every year, especially this year, is it's kind of confounding. It's astounding. But maybe we should try to go get their GM.
Listen, you got the we tried to get their coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had Montoya, and he came from the Rays system, and we thought, hey, he's going to bring us some Rays magic. That didn't work out for us so well. You look at the Rangers; they had a 5-man rotation with DeGrom down. Okay, everything came together. Dane Dunning did well. Martin Perez was not bad. What do they do? Okay, we're just going to get Scherzer. We're just going to get Montgomery. They now have pretty much a 7-man rotation. They are stacked at every single position. I think it boils down to, you look at the Rangers versus the Jays. They just are way better than us. They're just more talented in every possible way. There's very little, like Jonah Heim goes down. They bring in Garver. I would take Garver over either of our catchers. They just are more talented. They're better. And look at their division. What they have, the Astros and they have the Mariners. And the Mariners have come alive all of a sudden. And you know what? Last year, they're the ones who eliminated the Jays. And now, they may end up being in the playoffs somehow together. But I think it's just a case where this is very top heavy, bottom heavy, and there's these teams in the middle, and the Jays are just in the middle. They're just not good enough, period. They have probably the best outfield defense I've seen ever from them. I think they're better than the Mosby, Barfield, Bell years, with Kiermaier, Varsho, and Springer out there. That's the best defense they've ever had. And that's what they shot for, and they got it, and all the power to them. The starters did well for the most part. The bullpen's been good. But even like you look at Romano compared to other closers, he has a lot of blips. He's not Class A out there. He's not Edwin Diaz when Edwin Diaz is healthy. So I think they picked a very good team, but not an excellent team, and they're just not good enough. And don't even get me started on the Atlanta Braves, and don't get me started on the Phillies. I take the Phillies over the Jays. Like, I just think that they're just not good enough. I think they will still capture that one wild card spot, but they'll be like the Leafs. They'll get bounced out in the first round, and we're going to be left to square one. What are we going to do about this?
So how do you feel now, looking back a few weeks in hindsight, about them? What did you think their chances were of acquiring a big name at the deadline?
See, I for example, love the Jordan Montgomery move for Texas. St. Louis goes out and gets him, and he becomes Cy Young. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He comes now to Texas. He's been almost perfect for them. Look at what Scherzer's doing. I said, you know what? I know our starting pitching is really great. I wouldn't mind another arm or two in the rotation because you can never have too much pitching. And if you have Montgomery right now pitching like that for us, it just gives the whole team confidence that way. I love the signing for the pen. We were never going to get Ohtani. It was not going to happen. Even if the Angels were going to move Ohtani, we don't have the goods to give them. We just don't. We don't have a farm system here in Toronto. So many other teams can just load up and give them 3-4 prospects. We don't have those 3-4 prospects. The issue was, unless you're going to drop a Bichette or drop a Guerrero, you have all these guys that there was nobody available that was better than what we had. That's
Right.
how I see it. So I don't blame them. I would have gone for more depth, certainly, because again, you can never have too much depth. If I was going to go for depth, again, it's more pitching, and I would have gotten the Montgomerys in this world. And I
I
think
agree
they,
with you. I at the time, and I'm sorry that it didn't work out. I was happy they picked up Paul DeJong, and he just didn't hit. And I mean, at some point, DeJong, yeah, at some point you have to cut bait there, and that's fine, right? There's no room for him on the team.
Nope.
My hope was, and I think I said this last month, was I hope that Bichette comes back and DeJong hits enough that they leave him at shortstop and they move Bichette to second base. No, Bichette is getting better defensively, but it's, I still would rather have him at second base. But that didn't happen, and whatever, that's fine. But I agree with you. People were like, oh, why don't they go out and get a big bat? I'm like, well, who do you want? The big bats were Teoscar Hernandez, Nelson Cruz. There was nobody out there that you wouldn't have to, you basically would have been calling other teams and saying, hey, I need this guy and I'm willing to overpay like crazy for him. And there wasn't just anybody out there that I thought, wow, we really got to go get this guy, right? I just think that you're right. This team, as it's constructed right now, if the pitching stays the way it is, you have to get Varsho, Chapman, and Guerrero hitting more than they are right now. And I'm not saying like Guerrero hasn't been terrible, but he's not the RBI guy that he was, right? He's not driving in, he's not hitting those home runs and doing everything else. If he gets hot down the stretch, and if Varsho stays hot now that he's got the toe tap, and Chapman picks it up a little bit, it's going to solve a lot of problems. All of a sudden, if you're adding another half run or a run of offense a game, you may close that and you may get to the playoffs and think, man, we've actually got a pretty good rotation here to work with. We've got tons of relievers. Our offense is going, and now you're really a threat. But if those three, if especially Chapman and Guerrero can't pick it up down the stretch, I think, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think they're better than any of those three teams. It's just not going to happen.
If I was betting, I still think the Jays are going to make the playoffs, but just barely. But there's a lot of hot teams now in the AL. It's scary times if you are in the AL East, if you are in the AL West. So
and remember that down the stretch, the Jays have a ton of games against a bunch of really tough teams, right? They don't have an easy schedule down the stretch, right? So
no, fair. And as we end today's episode, I had another baseball thought for you besides the Blue Jays and whether they're going to make the playoffs. I keep having this comparison in my mind, Wayne, about Mike Trout and Bryce Harper. And taking aside the defensive part of it, because obviously Harper had TJ surgery in his back way sooner than anybody expected. And, Trout's had his injuries statuses throughout his career a little bit here, and especially later on in life now. I pulled up some offensive numbers here to see, am I close or not? It's pretty interesting to see how close these two actually are as far as how they produce. So Harper, 12 years versus Trout, 13 years. Harper, 1473 games versus 1488 games. So a year difference, but almost identical amount of games played. Harper, 295 home runs, Trout, 368. Harper, 859 RBIs, Trout, 940. Harper, 929 walks, Trout, 964. 1479 hits for Harper versus 1623. 281 average. Trout has a 301 average. Harper, 389 OBP and a 518 slug. Trout, 412, 582. So Trout's always a little tick above, but at the end of the day, Wayne, I was thinking from a hitting standpoint and what they've done, if you had to have one guy on your team right now and you're heading to the playoffs, do you want Mike Trout or do you want Bryce Harper?
Harper. Are you saying just for this playoff run, or are you saying going forward?
That's it. No, we're gonna go. Let's say to this playoff run. We're gonna go now. We're in 2023, and they can have one guy on your team right now. You want Harper? Or you want Trout?
Man,
it's a good problem to have.
I would say this year, if you're looking at the Jays could suddenly trade, Paul DeJong for Brandon, whatever. Paul DFA for one of those two guys, I think I would probably take Trout for this postseason. But if you told me all things are equal, their salaries are the same, contract is the same, and everything else, and now you've got them going forward, I would take Harper because I think Trout is pretty clearly. I mean, Harper's been hurt a lot over the last year too, right? But Harper's a year and a half younger, and I think Trout is pretty clearly now on the downside. He's only 32. People think he must be older than that, but he's been in the league for like he's just like Harper. He came right out of and boom,
13 years,
right?
13 years. Yeah.
And so does he have a few more good years in him? Yeah, he probably does. My question is Trout a Hall of Famer?
1,000%. 1,000%.
I look at those stats and I think, okay, he's not played much over the last few years. He's not at 400 home runs yet. He barely has a 300%.
If his career ends right now due to injury,
that's what I'm saying. Is he yet?
The career ends right this second. Right this second, Trout is in the Hall of Fame because all those Gold Gloves, All Stars, etc. Harper is not.
Right, Harper is not for sure yet.
But Trout, yes. Trout will get in the Kirby Puckett way.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I think he is a Hall of Famer as it sits right now if he never played another game. But I really think it would be borderline for me. Like I would look at it and I'd be like, never won a World Series. Is that his fault? No, it's not his fault necessarily. But those numbers aren't so spectacular that they're just like, wow, that's amazing. He had a number of really good years and a bunch of years where he was hurt and was okay to better, right? I think a lot of this too, when you say all-stars, well, yeah, they had to send somebody from the Angels, right? Was he always deserving of that? Probably not. So I don't know. I'm sure you're right. He will be a Hall of Famer. And it's that one game. You've got one game and a wild card, and who do you want in your lineup, Mike Trout or Bryce Harper? I probably want Mike Trout in that one game. But going forward, if you were talking about taking one of them, it would be Harper.
I'm really fearful for Trout because that WBC game with Ohtani striking him out to end the series, that's the image I'm going to have of Mike Trout for a long, long time. I have that burn in my brain because that was the most intense moment I've ever seen in baseball. I never saw the Carlton Fisk home run, and just the two teammates facing off, they both wanted it so badly, and Ohtani was better. And I think that's the image I'm going to have of him. Whereas Bryce Harper, I just see that fire. I love the fire of Harper. I know it turns off people a lot, but he's to me like the MLB version of Jimmy Butler. He makes everybody around him better. He's intense, hard worker, and a gamer, and just so talented. And man, if he didn't have his injuries as well, like he would have gone to the moon. Harper will be interesting to see, like if he does break certain milestones, etc. Don't know if he's going to make the Hall of Fame at this point based on his trajectory. I don't think so. But if I had to have one guy in my lineup in the World Series right now, I take Harper over Trout. But
I think it's almost a coin flip, right? I like what Trout can do, defensively and everything else. I like all of that kind of stuff. It's almost a dead even for me, right? So.
It's funny. You have Aaron Judge, you have Mike Trout, and you have Bryce Harper sitting at a table, okay? And, they're talking to the ladies or whatever. And I know they're married, but like getting attention, obviously, when they're sitting together and everybody's like, oh my God, Aaron Judge. Oh my God, Bryce Harper. Shohei Ohtani walks into the bar and sits down at the bar. Everybody's moving away. Like Ohtani is in another league at this point. And these guys are so good, and he's in another league. It's like the way Glavine and Maddox, had that commercial, and they're watching McGuire at the taking BP, and they're like, "Man, chicks dig the long ball." And Ohtani is just at that another level, and we're debating Trout and we're debating Harper at the level we are, and you bring Ohtani to the equation, it's not even a question, and it's not even for the pitching side of it, just from a hitting standpoint, what this guy is able to do. So, man, we're all really interested in his free agency watch, where he's going to land, where he's going to score. But there's a guy that also he only has to play a couple of years, 3 more years based on where he's at. He's making the Hall of Fame simply because what he's done, nobody has done at that level and will never do again. So it's pretty cool how he's just head and shoulders above these guys, and these guys are great.
Yeah.
Wayner, Little Wayne, Doug Laurie Sports. Thank you for sharing your sports insights and wisdom. You have forgotten more about sports than I will ever know, and most of the viewers. How is life at Doug Laurie Sports? How's life in the world of memorabilia? What can you share with us from your neck of the woods?
Well, things are pretty solid at the store. It's starting to pick up again. We've got a lot of hockey releases coming out. The big news is, as of this taping yesterday, the NFLPA filed basically said Panini no longer has the right to make football cards. We're going with Fanatics. And so Fanatics bought Topps a while back, and now I'm expecting some more legal stuff to go on here when Panini says, hey, you can't do that because we already have products ready to be released and all that sort of thing. So I don't know what the legal remedy will be to that, but Fanatics is sort of steamrolling over everybody else. It doesn't affect me that greatly because Upper Deck is kind of a freestanding company and hockey is a smaller market. We raised $3,000. I haven't actually announced that anywhere else. We raised $3,000 for the Simcoe County, the Down Syndrome Association of Simcoe County. So thank you to everybody who was involved in that or bid on things. We're having a little check presentation out here at our show this weekend, which you won't be able to attend because this will be after that. I think will be posted. The other thing that people might be interested in is September 22nd and 23rd at our monthly show here at the mall at the Kozlov Center in Barrie. Marcel Dion will be here both days. He's coming to set up. Marcel has his own merchandise and stuff like that, and so you can buy something from him and get an autograph or two. He's a great guy, a lot of fun to talk with. We're hoping to actually have another NHL player that Marcel played with on Saturday, just somebody to keep Marcel company when things are a little quiet. But if you're looking for more information on that, by the time the show airs, we'll have all that information up on the website. And I guess the only kind of, I don't know if I've showed you this in the past. I'll show you this. Have I showed you that before? That is a Lord Stanley. Okay, yes. I thought I couldn't remember. It was sitting on my desk, and I thought, well, then the most interesting thing. I have picked up a lot of stuff, but a lot of what I picked up is a lot of the small. I picked up a lot of smaller stuff right now. I would say the most interesting thing I picked up here recently is a couple of oversized Dave Steve autographs. I found those at a pawn shop yesterday, of all places. So just kind of, I like neat little stuff like that. You'll see that in the background. My Blue Jays jacket is gone. Somebody bought that a couple of days ago. And other than that,
someone's hawked Dave Steve for a pack of smokes.
Here you go. Here's a card of your favorite guy.
Kyrie Irving, Rookie of the Year.
That's a 1-of-1 piece.
Amazing.
But actually, a customer of mine pulled this, and I've listed it for him, and this is really neat. That's Ted Kluszewski, and that's a pair of pants with the belt loops. It's a cut of a pair of pants from the White Sox. That will sell for $250 to $300, I would think, something along those lines. We've had a lot of neat. This is a product called Solitaire. There's 3 cards in a pack, and they're all 1-of-1s. I just sold a Hulk Hogan 1-of-1 earlier this week and a Molly Holly 1-of-1, which went to somewhere close to where I grew up. And then cards like this are in there too. That's DeAndre Jordan, which DeAndre Jordan isn't like the biggest name in the world. But I sold a Julius Randle logo man earlier this week out of that. So all kinds of neat stuff like that just kind of floating around out here.
They keep cutting up letters and jerseys and pants, and people want them. That's amazing, Wayne. Thank you for sharing. Always interesting to see what you're finding in the world of memorabilia. And we'll have you back real soon on The Chosen Life and more sports talks as we're going towards the MLB playoffs. It's going to be upon us very, very soon. NFL season will be starting. Still lots of NHL, NBA talks. So lots going on in the world of sports, Wayne. We'll see you real soon on The Chosen Life.